All right. Okay, this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Business and Economic Development Committee. Around the table, we have committee members, Councillor Frisch, Councillor Leonard, myself, and Councillor Tremble, and we also have Councillor Fournier, Councillor Dean, Councillor Yakubaga present. So we will get started with the recommendations from the Cultural Commission on Spring 2024 grant awards.
Yes, as you know, the Cultural Commission has a grant program that the city funds twice a year, once in the fall and then once again in the spring. And they made some recommendations for the spring awards. The first recommendation is for Bangor Ballet for $2,293 for alleviation of administrative costs of the Thomas School of Dance and revenue costs at the Gracie Theater. This allows the Bangor Ballet to keep ticket prices accessible for members of the community and to continue support for other artistic businesses. And the next one is Bangor Beautiful, again for $2,293 to commission a colorful multi-story mural at 116 Hammond Street depicting the Maine woods in springtime by Maine artist Jared Goulet. And the next one is Maine Academy of Modern Music, $2,293 requested for support of Amplify Bangor program. It's a extracurricular music instruction during the school year and also rock camps in July and August. And then the last recommendation is Marilee Larson, $300 for reimbursement of materials and supplies for a one-night pop-up art exhibit at the site of the old YMCA building using remnants of the building, constructed frame to represent images of demolition and archived images from the 1800s and other images that she's been collecting from Bangor residents.
Very cool. Councillor Tremble?
Approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Councillor Fournier?
Why 2293?
Well, they sort of divided the number of what they had left
Okay,
between the three, yeah.
all right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Just wondering what building is 116 Hammond Street?
It's the old, 116 is,
The Bangor Beautiful mural?
yeah, I forget what it's called.
There's a massage replacement currently. It's below Novio's, above.
Yeah, it's next to Novio's.
Okay.
That's right. I couldn't think of.
All right, seeing no doubts, then that would have passage. And next one is very exciting, some schematic plans for the Central Commercial Kitchen Project.
Okay, before I introduce our architects, I just wanted to, we're working on this for a while and we've had a couple of new counselors in between. So that's why in your packet, I provided the feasibility study that was done last fall, just to give some context of how did we get here. This is a project that's actually been active and reactivated since 2019 when we pursued federal funds to do this level of work that we're at right now, as well as to get us to construction. So ultimately, with this particular phase of the project, we'll be preparing construction plans for bidding. And during this time period, we're also going to be looking at sort of operations and management, again, using Carolyn Paris, who did the feasibility study, asking her to help with us with that, and also looking for further funding. So I'm going to, oh, you're already right there. So I didn't have to move them over. So Paul, or whichever Paul wants to start first, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and if you need to share screen, and go right ahead.
Great, thanks, Anne. Yes, you've got all the Pauls in our office tonight. Good evening, everyone. We're excited to be able to present this. We've been working with Anne and her team for a while now on the concept. Paul is going to share some images, but my name is Paul Lewandowski, founder of Paul Designs Project. We're based out of Portland. We recently completed the Fork Food Lab in South Portland, which is a very similar program to the Bangor Central Kitchen. So we're excited to be able to continue our knowledge and everything we've learned on that project to help with you. And what we have tonight is we're going to show you, we're going to try to keep it pretty quick. I know you've got a tight agenda of things, but show you what we've been working on, where we are. We have some initial budget numbers. We're sort of at the end of the schematic design phase, which is the beginning part of things. There's still a ways to go with things. One of the things I'll say that we've been keeping in the back of our head, especially with Anne's tutelage, is what are the opportunities for this project to become a source of income and an incubator for small business growth. And those have been really important parts of this project. And we've seen that happening at Fork with small businesses growing because of the facility. So we know it can happen, and we applaud the city of Bangor for taking on this and looking to create the central kitchen. So I'll let Paul, if you can share your screen. So what we thought we would just go very quickly through, we are looking at the building on Cleveland Avenue. That is the site of the project. And what we started with was looking at the building and doing an assessment of it. So there is a full report that we shared with Anne that I think she's shared with all of you. We don't want to go through every item on that because that would take forever. But we want to share with you tonight basically the building assessment. We did a first round of design concepts, and Paul will go over that. And then from that, we developed a sort of direction that we're headed in. Doesn't mean that the other options are discarded, but we just have been moving that way. And then we did some pretty pictures of the version we're looking at and some opportunities for what might be at this point. It's not what will be, but we're trying to think about opportunities. So we'll start with very quickly going through the building assessment. So the existing building, here is a photograph of the existing building on Cleveland Ave. It was a military officers club. It has a large kitchen in it. It's a one-story building, mostly concrete block construction. We've done a full assessment of the building architecturally, structurally, and for mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We know that the building is sound structurally, but it is at its sort of capacity. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are at the end of their life cycle, so they would need to be replaced, and that is all factored into what we're doing. But it has some parking, it has some good access points, and we think that we can do some things with it that would make it a really great facility for a shared community kitchen incubator space. So there's obviously we can go much more into this, but we can answer some questions after as well. But in essence, here's our site, and here's a lot of technical information. This was a code study that we've done at the building, and you can see the floor plan. There's a large existing kitchen, some large spaces. Suffice to say that there are enough exits. All those orange arrows are exits. It's a one-story building. And as I said, there's some great access points, and we think it actually fits really well with the program. And we've got our initial 3 options. We'll sort of demonstrate that. So here are the design concepts we started with. I'm going to let Paul, my colleague, Paul Bryant, who's our project lead, talk a little bit about the concepts and what are the nuances of each one of them. I will start by saying these 3 concepts we were looking at, sort of 3 things, like sort of from what's the least you could do to what's the most you would want to do as a framework for approaching the renovation of this building.
Yes, I'll pick in from that and on what Paul was saying, in that we were trying to retain as much of the existing as possible. That was one of the key goals of the project, outlined by Anne and her team, was trying to keep as much of the existing perimeter that we have of the building, and how what can we use with the current shell of the building and how we can reinterpret that into a future space for the Bangor Central Kitchen. So in this first option, it was trying to understand how we want the flow of the space to work. And in doing a lot of these projects, we found that the most key point of the entire building is where the loading dock is and where all items are taken in and taken out of the building, whether to be sold, to be packaged, processed, produced, anything in that regard. And in the current state of the building, in the first option, we thought it would be best to keep the loading dock where it was and see how that would play out in terms of access to the building and how that would impact the flow. At its current rate, the current loading dock is on a small driveway access point right adjoining Cleveland Street. And at its current size, it doesn't really have the capacity to hold trucks larger than little larger size box trucks. It could not hold a full semi. So that was something that we definitely thought would cause an impediment, but we still wanted to try to keep that loading dock there on the first option. So in
Just
doing
to
so,
add, Paul, one of the things that we have learned is that to consolidate orders coming in and out, everything gets delivered by a tractor trailer. So that becomes the primary mode of delivery. And there's also savings for all of the members of the organization by pooling their orders each day.
yeah. So, and in thinking about that as well, one of the key points is that having a central area where receiving and outgoing products has uninterrupted flow between all avenues that it needs to go, whether that be the kitchen or any storage here where there would be cold or dry storage. Having as quick access, open access to the loading dock is really important to us. We typically call this, in essence, the hub, an area where basically everything revolves around. So that kind of helped us to articulate most of this initial scheme. But a lot of this you'll see on the interior walls, most of these where it's filled in with white, is existing walls that are retained in the building. This option was trying to retain as much of the exterior and the interior as possible. And then also but some of the areas needed to be pulled out to make access for a new full-size kitchen, storage of both cold and dry. So that's just something to factor in. And then at the bottom section, you'd see that we try to retain as much as possible and then reuse this as more public space for people coming in and out of the building. And while most of the kitchen and storage will all be private, and you'll see that kind of evolve as the options go on.
Yeah, that just to expound on that, the program has spaces for the members who are using the kitchen and have production spaces, but there's also a public component of this where you might have a pop-up restaurant where somebody could test out a new menu, or they could train wait staff for an upcoming restaurant opening, or a multi-purpose space where you might have a rental or indoor farmers market. So there's the members, and then when we say as the sort of call it private. And then the public is when people are invited in. There's also the potential for retail where people are selling the products they're making here, that sort of thing. So we look at it in sort of public-private, but it's obviously all a public building and different levels of access.
Yeah, so building off that, it continues with option B, where we then thought the most pivotal part would be moving the loading dock and trying to re-visualize how we would control the space that way. So in doing so, we decided to move the loading dock to the outside edge of the right section of the building, which we thought also would work best for a lot of turning radiuses and access in general for any trucks coming in. The current site work as it stands actually has a pretty good setup as it in its current state that allows trucks of that size to turn in. We've done some calculations with our associates, with Carpenter Associates, our engineering team, to make that, to prove that. Which you'll see later when we show off some site plans and how that access is gained. So in doing so, when we moved the loading dock, we took out a lot of what was going on inside before and visualized how all that's coming in from the trucks here have easy access in one long hallway that accesses all the offices, the kitchens, and all the cold and dry storage with ease, and then also works its way into the public space as well. And now this public space has moved down to the bottom left, which works along with a new entrance that we've tried to do to help steer people in the right direction as they're coming into the building. You'll see things like a larger garage door or overhead door in these public spaces, which invites people in and outside of the building when open during events or anything that happens in the future. So you'll see that once we found this kind of linear form that by which the space gets controlled, we started to kind of find a rhythm to how the future options could be evaluated and built upon. So in option C, this was one where we thought we could consolidate the building a little bit more by demolishing a whole section of the perimeter of the building. As stated before, trying to retain as much as we can, but seeing what's the possibilities where we could demolish, because there are, and as you could read in the report in the future, that there is a lot of decay that happened in the building as it stands, and trying to figure out points at which we can have, good bones of a building versus parts that need to be managed and taken out or reinvigorated in some way. So in this section, we thought it'd be best to demo this right wing of the building and then move the loading dock up here, which would create a larger space where the site ends off for possibly more parking, event space outside, spots for food trucks or any sort of other produce trucks that need to come in, as well as also reworking at the entrance as well, again, to enter right from the front with some side entrances. But as well, this whole wing here becomes where we have offices and storage for cold and dry storage. And then that moves easily right into the kitchen spaces. And then as same with the public spaces.
So we looked at those three concepts, and the third concept, we felt that, from the demolishing and moving got us some things, but it didn't really get us as much as we'd hoped or expected. And then the first option, where we kept as many of the walls, really started to compromise the program. So the middle option, option B, if you want to just quickly go back to that, Paul, was the one that we felt had the most potential, because it kept the kitchen towards the back. It gave us a large yard where we might have outdoor spaces, outdoor cooking, anticipating maybe there's an outdoor pizza oven, who knows what could happen. And then a linear process, which, as we said earlier, a linear, easy, clean process of shipping and receiving really does so much for the efficiency of the building. So we decided that we would take this option, and we had had a couple meetings with Anne and her team and her staff to sort of talk about this, and decided to pursue option B and develop it a little further with some images of what it might look like, as well as some budgeting. So the other thing, if you want, do you have the plan next, Paul, or?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing that we talked about, and something we found at Fork, is that there's a real need for cold banking, which is basically the ability to take pallets of food that are frozen and store them for periods of time. It's actually a very lucrative business, and we have enough space to be able to do that. So we added that to the program. We were just doing calculations for Fork in South Portland and looking at like subleasing the space to another tenant versus cold banking. I think it was almost a 3 or 4 times the income potential for that property. So for that piece of the building. So you go to the plan, Paul. What we did is we looked at an addition where Paul is showing you that would be a cold banking facility, which is basically, think Home Depot racks but frozen. And keeping our cooler. So this is the option that we've sort of pushed a little bit further. We'll show you in a minute. We did some more calculations on occupancy, how many toilets we really needed. Spoiler alert, more than we thought. And then a place for food trucks to park, and try to create a sort of new entry feel to the space, but really keeping this more or less like we showed you in option C. The kitchen is the big white block at the top. There's a lot more to be done in there, but that's the next step for us. So do we have a next image, Paul? I think is a little bit more showing you where we have public space to the front in the pink, the bathrooms in the center in green, accessible easily by everyone, including some shower spaces. And that's another thing we know that sometimes when somebody's working in a kitchen all day, they just want to take a shower and change before they go home. So that is part of this. The kitchen space is the sort of periwinkle color. The freezers and cold storage are in the purple. And then the orange represents the path of coming in the building, shipping and receiving, packing, shipping, all of that, all the way to some office space and administrative space at the other end of the building. So this was the direction that we really sort of are liking and trying to develop. The other thing we did was we were able to demolish just the last bay of the building so we could tuck in the loading dock and get enough space for that tractor trailer to easily turn on the existing roads. And I think we have a site plan. I don't know if that's next or yeah, so here's the footprint. You can see the dotted line of how a tractor trailer can come in and back in. We've got parking on the site for users of the building. This was another also full topographic. You can see towards the right of the building, it falls off sharply. Another reason we wanted to move the loading dock in a little bit. But we think there's a real opportunity to create a sort of outdoor court at the front of the building. If you could show that, Paul, the oval, or just go back one to the site plan, just to show where it is on the site plan. That in this part of the building, we think there's an opportunity to create sort of a bit of a new facade to the building and an exterior court. So it's a minimal amount of exterior work, but it could potentially transform the perception of the building. So, and then I think you have next image. I want to keep moving. We're taking too much time. I apologize. Actually, go back one to the site plan. Again, just this is our assessment of codes and occupancy and everything. So there's a lot more technical information, obviously, that we're happy to answer any questions about, but we thought we would share that. So then the next question is, how much is this going to cost? So we started this project last July. And at that point, we had an estimate of about 3.7 million for the restoration of the building. It's been not quite a year, but we're seeing escalation in prices. So at about 8% escalation, we're looking at about a $4 million project. And then if you remember, I said we were going to add an addition that was going to be the freezer and just a few other spaces like loading dock. And that's putting us to a budget of about 5.1 million for the project. Now, could we not do the addition? Absolutely. Could it be phased? Absolutely. But we still feel that what we're doing is in this range of about 4 million. And then the benefit of that cold storage facility add-on, I think we could do some life cycle costing. And I think you would find that it actually pays for itself in a few years or so. In terms of income stream. And I know Anne has shared a lot of that technical data. We can answer more questions on this, but we just to sort of show where the range is. It's hovering around a $4 million job without the addition of that cold banking space. And then, so we're architects and we like to design as well. So we did a few images of how we envision the front of the building. And these are a surprise to everyone, including Anne. We just finished these yesterday, or today actually. But just to show you what might be, doesn't mean what will be. But one of the things we're thinking about is what could we do to create a lively, exciting energy around this building that could have a public part and also give some identity. So what we're thinking of is, you can flip to the next image, is basically that we have our building at the top. At the bottom, we were thinking of creating on the facade an image of all this food, and we're doing this with a tile mosaic. And you can see we've got a big overhead door in there. We've got some closer images of that. You can see the parking and where we have food trucks lining up, and the sky looks a little ominous, but it's not, it should be sunny. But go to the next image, Paul. But thinking about, like, you could see we're making those images of the mosaic out of 4x4 tile. And then when you step away, you see it. And when you get closer, they pixelate. Could that be a different material? Could it be wood fins? Could it be metal siding? Absolutely. We thought we'd have some fun with an image. But the idea is to create an outdoor court. That overhead door would go into the public space. We've got some opportunity for signage on it, some garden space, ability to drive up. Entrances for the restaurant on the left and the main entrance on the right where that person is standing, and trying to really create not without adding too much to the building, really just sorry, forgot to mention, we know the building is going to need some energy updates in terms of insulation. So part of that means reskinning the building and adding exterior insulation, which is all factored into what we're talking about, but we have to redo the facade. What if we thought about doing an image that was vegetables and fruits or food related? I think we have a few more images as well. Here's a night image showing how there's some planters and that entrance to the building behind the wall. It's really meant to be a facade wall. Here's even a dusk image that shows the thing lit up at night and how it could be a fun thing. The idea would be to just give the building some identity. Is that the last image we have, Paul?
That is, yes.
It is. All right. So we've indulged ourselves with a little bit of fun, but all in all, we feel that there's a real opportunity, and we're excited about how much this building could really provide support for small businesses starting out, a public component to introduce people to local production. And you never know who's going to come in and might all of a sudden start a business making dumplings or salsas or whatever. So the public component is important. And like I said, that cold banking, I think, becomes a real moneymaker and a real resource regionally, not just for Bangor, but for the whole region. So that's our presentation. I apologize. I know I've taken more than 15 minutes, but we're happy to answer any questions or go back to anything.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, just two. One on the cold storage, you refer to adding to the building. Is it actually adding to the building, or are you just adding it outside?
We could do it inside the building. That's possible. But what we decided to do with this version is to make it an addition to the exterior. We've been doing some, we've used these.
I understand that, but is it an actual addition or just an outside walk-in freezer that you're putting in place?
It's an outside walk-in freezer that we're putting, and we'd have to connection to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's right. So it's not a new, it's not inside the building. It's actually, we're calling it addition because it'll be connected. But
Right.
yes, it's just the metal insulated panels for cold storage. And just as a side note, from an energy efficiency standpoint, one of the things we've been researching is when you have a full-time cold storage, when you make cold, you have heat. So we can use that waste heat to produce hot water for the domestic use or for the kitchen use, or even use it for radiant purposes or heating purposes. So there's a way that we can sort of double bank that the efficiency of those coolers and the energy use and use it for other parts of the building. So, and those are things that we'll develop more, but we're also trying to make this as sustainable a building as possible.
And one other quick question. I know you said you were involved in the Fort Clav and Southern Maine. Not a long answer for this, as short as you can, but how is it structured? Is that a government-owned facility? Is it a board of directors that oversees it? How is it structured?
Fork is a not-for-profit, so they have a board of directors, and they operate as a I won't say quasi-governmental, but a not-for-profit organization. So in some ways similar to a civic entity is this.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Leonard?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a question on the freezer storage unit that will be an addition on. Let's say we split that up into phases, as you said earlier. If we get this kitchen up and running and then we decide to do this additional add-on, it's okay if you don't know the answer to this question, but will that shut down the kitchen for some period of time? And if so, do we know for how long?
Actually, that was one of the reasons why we put it as an exterior piece, because we could make this building work without that cold banking, so that it could be fully operational, and that could be added on after the fact. So you can see our loading dock still works for the building, and then off the back of the loading is how we have the cold banking dock. So we've decided to, in this scheme, put 2 of our freezers and coolers for the whole building as exterior additions. But in essence, it could be easily made as a phase 2. And we could even move the other coolers and freezers into the building. So absolutely, we're trying to see if you could do that in the future. There may be opportunities, grants, who knows, to do that as well.
So to clarify, minimal to no time lost of operations of this kitchen with this add-on? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yes.
Questions? Council Fournier?
So the revenue from the cold storage. If you have option, what is it, B versus D. How much additional revenue is coming in with the increased cold storage?
I think this is the same, this is not the same size as Fork, right, Paul?
In terms of Fork is
It's air-
30,000 square feet. This is
No,
probably
no,
gonna be
the
around-
cold bank, it's
the cold banking, the Fork, had planned for about 1,500, I believe, square feet. This would be about a little close to 1,000 or right about at it.
I think we had planned, it was about a couple 100,000 in revenue per year. I believe I'm a little fuzzy, so we're probably talking closer to 100 to 150 potentially in revenue per year in rental income. Obviously, that doesn't take into consideration the cost of operation, but gross income could be that much. There's it's really by the pallet, by the day in a lot of ways for rating this. So we could do more information, more calculations into that, but it isn't a small amount of money in terms of income potential.
No, thank you. I was just looking for what the payback is.
Yeah, it's probably a 4 or 5 year payback is my guess, potentially.
Other questions or comments? I think it looks great. The price tag on everything in our lives keeps going up, so I'm not surprised that this one went up too, but it's interesting to look at what could happen up in an area of town that has been kind of left wild at this point. And I
It
mean,
becomes
one
an
of the-
anchor for that area.
One of the things we've also talked about in this committee and in airport committee has been how people want cold storage near the airport. So
Right.
would this help I know it wouldn't replace like the big cold warehouse that we've talked about, but would there be an impact or would there be a benefit to having it just happen to be cold storage so close to our airport?
I'm not sure the size would help with that, but there's something for us to think about as we think about cold storage at the airport and here, yeah, I'll look into that.
Could certainly help with anyone who's a producer at this facility who obviously needs cold banking, but it's more on a pallet by pallet basis for the scale we're talking about here, as opposed to a larger facility. But it does have, it is a pretty, of all the facilities here, aside from potential rental income from the public space, it is one of the bigger sources of revenue, I would think, for this building, even at the small scale. Potentially.
So do we need a motion on this or we're just
No,
informational?
but yeah, just information, so we're gonna continue moving forward with that option, and I mean, obviously, we can go back and revisit things. And we'll look at, what could be phased
Yeah.
to move forward. And we'll keep you updated as we go, and also I'll be working with Carolyn on a operations and maintenance, just to kind of answer some of those questions about how does this work? There's still a lot of questions, so that's sort of our next work with her.
Well, the financial assumptions were that a lot of this would be grant funded. Is this what our new grant writer will do? Is this what this group does? Who's going after the grants?
Yeah, we will be working with the city's grant writer, and actually Carolyn, our consultant, has done EDA grants for these in 2 other locations, so I'll probably be using her as well, because she has those connections at the Philly office of EDA.
Yeah, and we've actually had some EDA connections through our Fork experience, and I think there's some real opportunities there for grants. Obviously, we're not grant writers, but as tangential architects looking at spaces and thinking about it, I think there's some real opportunities. Like I said, and very well, it's such an opportunity to create and nurture small business. It's really exciting. I mean, we get excited about it because it helps so many people in a positive way, and that's what we like to do.
Councilor Fournier?
So what option are you pursuing? D?
This option D, and it will have, we'll phase in whether or not we do the cold banking. We're going to do more work next, obviously, on developing the actual kitchen layout And our numbers will get to be more refined and more detailed for estimates as we move forward. This at a broad scope, we're looking at this on a square foot cost basis, but as we move forward, we'll be looking at actual costs for the freezers. We can say how much the cold bank freezer would cost, and then we can really do some life cycle costing on it. But yeah, we think we would push forward with option D. It really lays out well and I think would have a great flow and provides maximum amount of flexibility for so many things that we don't know that will happen in the building yet, but could.
Great, thank you.
Right. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and we're excited about the project. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So our next item is economic development strategy update.
Economic Development Officer and Business Development Specialist, Brad and Gita are here to just go over their work thus far.
Yes, hello. So we have been working very diligently to understand kind of where we were in 2022 with the Economic Development Strategic Plan, how that is the same now and how we can kind of spruce it up and really get familiar with it. We have hit the ground running, but I think it's important for us to kind of take a step back and organize our work, because the work will come, but we need to make sure that we work in a very organized and strategic fashion. The cornerstones of the work that we do is really being able to build the right partnerships with educational institutions, community organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Maker Partnership, and all of those entities that really serve the community, as well as ensuring that we have the right people at the table, including our youth. In order to ensure that we have a striving economy, we need to make sure that we continue to build our workforce, attract more people to our city, and increase our population. So, not to spend too much time in the intricate detail, unless you have any questions, the biggest pieces of the work that we do will be around positioning and branding, ensuring that Bangor is on the map for the city that it is. In addition to it being a service and a healthcare centered city, it's a city where you can enjoy the amenities of a city while enjoying the quality of life, having a good education in terms of primary education and higher education, and really being able to raise a family. And that message needs to go out consistently, and not only internally, but externally. For an example, I just came back from a conference in Durham, North Carolina. And what I will tell you is that I met with a bunch of people. And by the time I left, Bangor is a city that they know and they want to come visit, because it's important for us to be able to tell our story as much as we can, inside and outside. Youth engagement, the last time that we were here, we talked about the VIP summit where we were going to have youth at the table and speak to them about what is going to make them interested in continuing with life in Bangor. What are they interested in terms of an employer? And when I tell you that was a tremendous success. So our youth were not only able to deliver their message in a very poised manner, but very adamant about quality of life, which we kind of thought it was going to be more about, we wanted to be in a hybrid schedule in terms of work and employment, and we wanted to be able to remotely work. And it was more about, we want to be able to be in position to not struggle, but thrive and have quality of life. And so all of us were very intently listening, and we need to continue that engagement with our youth, not just at onesie, twosie events, but more of a continuous understanding the pulse and where they are and where they want to be, because that is our future workforce. Diversity and inclusion, DEI, is very, very important to us. And we are working with several organizations, including Bangor Pride, as well as CHISPA, as well as some immigrant populations. We have major partnerships that we're really proud of, including the International Economic Development Council, I want to make sure that I reference it the right way, the Maine Multicultural Center. We're trying to build those relationships, because we can't do it all, but if we get the right resources at the table, we can definitely make impact. I'm gonna hand it over to Brad to talk a little bit about his business perspective and the work that he does.
Sure. So with downtown development, we work closely with the Downtown Bangor partnership. And Betsy is wonderful to work with. And one project that we're working on right now is a welcome packet. So when new businesses come into Bangor, we can deliver a welcome packet that will give them information about the area and help them know that they are welcome in our community. As far as mall redevelopment, we're in contact with the owner of the mall, Namdar LLC, and have had communications with them. And as far as supporting the start, operation, and growth of businesses, we definitely feel it's important with collaborating with the Bangor Region Chamber and with the Downtown Partnership, which we were able to do in our most recent event, the VIP Summit. And it was a great success. A lot of folks attended and also including the university students who gave their input as well. One thing that we found is some folks who want to start a small business will come in and they're just a little overwhelmed and not quite sure where to start. So we developed this simple pamphlet that talks about starting a business in Bangor, advantages. We also talk about what we as a city can do to help. And then we have a nice list of resources and websites and nonprofit partners that can be very helpful with someone who's interested in starting a business. And then we have a nice basic checklist as well that folks can go through to get their feet underneath them as they start the process of starting up a business.
Is that new, the pamphlet? Or is that something fairly new?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're very new. Came out, we designed and made them about a month and a half ago.
Thanks.
Yep.
To piggyback off of the whole business development part of the work that we do, it's important that we position our small and medium-sized businesses and all businesses in our community to be able to operate and to be able to afford their operations and ultimately grow. It's one thing to be established, it's another thing to actually be able to grow and scale your business. So the presentation that we just saw on the central kitchen, that's tremendous. There's so many businesses in the food service and accommodations industry that cannot afford a space and cannot afford to be in a place daily and to be able to run their operations. So that's something that we're really proud of, as well as our Bangor Innovation Center. So we have several businesses there that utilize that space to run their operations and their headquarters. Of course, we're always needing additional space, so that's in the plan to be able to provide more warehouse space. We have a lot of requests for warehouse space. So as far as future, kind of what we see in terms of our vision, that's something that we're working on. And then we have some untapped, or at least not tapped for a while, opportunity that we are getting our minds around, and that is reactivating the foreign trade zone. We are Foreign Trade Zone 58. And being able to engage in foreign trade relations. So we are in kind of the initial phases of that, understanding what a trade zone is. The good news is that the model has changed a bit. So the businesses that are engaging in a trade zone and utilizing it for their business, they don't have to be in the proximity of the airport any longer. They could be in the vicinity of our city and still be able to utilize or to be able to benefit from things like decreased tariffs and decreased duties. So we're getting our mind around it. Again, this is work that is very new to both of us, but we're having the right conversations and the right people at the table. Brad, you want to talk about our relations with Canada?
Yeah, so we had a very nice meeting with the Maine International Trade Center, and they were able to help us connect with a lot of folks throughout Atlantic Canada. And so we've had several meetings, and we have several upcoming meetings with places like St. John, New Brunswick, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and other locations throughout Canada to see how we might be able to work together and utilize the foreign trade zone to the benefit of the city of Bangor and our Canadian neighbors.
Any questions?
Just another comment, a nice front page story on the Van Air success story the other day on the refrigeration business out
Yes,
there.
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
What he's done
Been
there?
going on for a while, but sounds like it's coming together.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Counselor Fish?
When you had a conversation with the owner of the mall, I guess the topic was redevelopment. Was there anything substantive that came out of that conversation?
I'd say that we're in a good place to have, the communication is fluid. So I think we're in a place where we can recommend ideas. That relationship will have to grow, but the good news is that the communication is there and it's open.
I picked up the phone.
They picked up the phone and they said hello.
Other comments or questions? I think it's great. I think the small business pamphlet is something that I think was sort of on the to-do list for a long time. I know that it was, I remember discussing it at a goal session a few seasons ago. Just because when my husband started his operations, I was texting Tanya Emery because I know her to say, hey, what do we need a license? Like, what do we need to do? Because I obviously wanted to be above board and all that. And especially if you're just a micro business, even a freelancer or something like that, just to know what you need to do. And there are so many great resources. So I think it'd be great if we could all get a copy of that brochure at a future meeting. I'm assuming that things in there include like SCORE and the Small Business Development Corporation, which is an unbelievable resource. And I'll sing their praises for years. They were amazing for Dave to get started. And there are so many resources and people, I heard about it from somebody who owned a business in Bangor who said, oh, you should go talk to her and she would be helpful. And just making those connections. Bangor is a small enough town that you can kind of ask around and usually someone has a friend who knows something. But if you don't have those connections, having the city provide this information is incredibly valuable. So I'm excited to see that.
Awesome. And then this will be accompanied by a welcome packet for new businesses.
I think it'd be great. I mean, even if we just wanted to preview one at a future council workshop or just have one at the table for us to look at, I think it'd be really
Yeah,
valuable to see.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So moving on,
Thank
the
you.
Hazy buildings. Cassie, what do you think?
Brian, our planning analyst is here to review that.
Yes, I don't think I've had the pleasure to meet
Yeah, we
all of
haven't
you. I'm Brian Scannell, I'm the planning analyst in community and economic development.
Welcome.
So it's nice to meet all of you finally. So a little bit back, Maine Historic Preservation reached out to us and alerted us that they had accepted the Hazy's building into the National Registry, which is mostly in an honorific title. So after we heard about that, we reached out to the owner of the building, Mr. Coleman, and he was very interested in getting a local designation. So we took it to Historic Preservation. Actually, I'll back up a little. So the Hazy's Memorial Building, so it's a little past the hospital on Broadway, it's at 490, and then a little before Hanford's. So it's the circular
It's
granite
the old
building.
Redemption Center.
Yes.
Put it in main terms.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it was nationally designated for two reasons. Number one, it had a really important local Maine transportation history. It was a bus terminal, being as a gateway to the north of Maine. And then it was also designated for its architectural style, which is a post-World War sleek looking transportation centric design. So for those two reasons, Maine Historic Preservation thought it'd be good for the national designation. So then we were having these conversations with Mr. Coleman and we decided it would be good to have a local designation. So we went before the Bangor's Historic Preservation Commission. And the commission really liked this idea and they were interested in having it locally designated. So that would be our 37th one site in particular. So this is just to recommend passage for hopefully the first read for the council meeting. If you have anything else.
No, that sounds good.
Counselor Tremble?
Well, it sounds like the building owner is on board with this and there's
Yeah.
no negative reason why we wouldn't want to do this, right?
I mean, he's been able to access funds to
Right,
help them with this
yeah, it's a
project.
positive thing.
Yeah.
Council.
Do you want to make a motion on that?
So we reckon this is a recommendation to,
Yeah.
does it go back to the planning board?
No, it'll go to you for first reading.
Okay, yeah, I would
It's a
recommend
code
that we
change.
approve this.
Second.
Okay, so motion second. Counselor
Just a
Clark?
question, please. So does it mean maybe they can get the grants for any improvement on the buildings?
Yeah, once you get
as
the,
historic.
on the National Register and
Perfect.
local, right?
Sounds good. I think that's positive.
Any other comments or questions? Sounds like, no doubt, so this has passion, sounds like a great move.
Great.
And then a check-in for the Hammond Street ground mural.
Yeah, when we last talked about the ground mural project on Hammond Street. The committee had asked to have a check-in to see what the design was gonna be, so I put that in your packet, and Greg is here from Bangor Beautiful if you have any questions. It was,
What's,
It's the very last page, if you scroll all the way to the.
yeah, I
end.
know, this is a big
Counselor Tremble?
packet.
what's the time frame on this?
I'm
It looks
not sure
great, I
what's our
mean,
start
yeah.
date. I forgot now. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Greg, I'm with Bangor Beautiful. We're starting to lay out the project, May 29th. It's a Wednesday. And we should have it laid out enough where we'll have a lot of volunteers on site June 1st. It's a Saturday to begin painting. And
Yeah, and how long does it expect to last? 1 season, 2 seasons?
it will be 2 to 3 seasons. Hammond Street is scheduled to be repaved in 2026.
Mhm.
So sometime during that period, it will be removed.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I'm excited to see this one go up. Thank you for all you do, Greg.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. And then the last, I need a motion on an executive session. No one remembers how to do them anymore.
I can't.
I know we haven't had one in a while.
Page 1. I do it, but I'm not.
All right, we go into executive session for 1 MRSA, section 456C for disposition of real property or economic development.
Second.
Okay, seeing a motion and a second, we have to do a roll call vote, and so, Councillor Fish,
Yes.
Councillor Leonard,
Yes.
Councillor Trumbull,
Yes,
and I'm a yes, so we are in executive session.
are we staying here?
Do you want us to go back or?
I think you want to go back to the
Okay.
bathroom, right?
It's up to you, I mean, we can tell you every move in that one.
Yeah. Might as well.
The rest of them are gonna, yeah, you guys just came in, I would say just go ahead and do it here in
Oh, okay.
and close the meeting. Or, yeah.